What if I told you that every single thing your mind does, from a fleeting thought to a powerful emotion, a distant memory, or even a really bizarre dream, could all be explained by one single, elegant rule? Well, that is the fascinating idea we are diving into today, a concept called the continuity theory.
I mean, it's a huge question, right? Our inner world feels so chaotic, a jumble of feelings, ideas, and impulses all mixed together. But this theory suggests there's a hidden order, a fundamental principle that ties it all together. So, what is this master rule that could be running the whole show inside your head?
Okay, so the entire theory is built on this one core idea. Your brain's number one job, its constant primary drive, is to seek and maintain balance. In biology, we call this homeostasis. You can think of it as the mind's ultimate North Star, the point it's always trying to get back to.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the theory looks at everything that happens to us. Every single piece of information, whether it's seeing a friend's face or hearing an unexpected noise, it acts like a little pebble tossed into a perfectly still pond. It creates a disturbance, a ripple of imbalance that the brain immediately has to get to work to settle down. And that state of perfect balance, it has a name, the homeostatic axis. Just picture a perfectly flat line. Any disturbance, any input, pushes your brain's activity above or below that line, and your brain's entire processing power is dedicated to just one thing, getting back to that baseline, that flat line, as efficiently as it possibly can. So this is the crucial part. It all works in this core loop. First, there's a disturbance. Check. Second, the brain takes a series of steps away from its balanced state. That's the journey it takes to process whatever just happened. And third, the brain engages in control, which is just the work it does to manage that journey and get back to its calm, baseline state. This simple loop is the fundamental engine of your mind. Okay, so if the mind is just taking these steps back to balance, what are those steps actually made of? This is where the theory gets really powerful, because it gives us a radical new definition for one of the most mysterious parts of our lives, our emotions. The theory proposes that the smallest building block of our entire mental world is something called an epsilon package. You can literally think of it as an atom of thought. And each one of these little packages has two parts: the emotion, which is the raw measure of the imbalance, and the theme, which is the direction or the subject of the thought. Every single experience you have gets broken down into these tiny units. And this brings us to one of the biggest insights of the whole thing. Emotion isn't some vague, random feeling. According to this theory, emotion is the measurable cost of getting back to balance. The emotion load is just the sum of all the little steps the brain has to take along the way. So the more steps, the longer the journey back, the higher the emotion load. And this illustrates it perfectly. It explains the difference between simple feelings and really complex ones. So basic emotions like, say, fear or joy, they're the result of a short, direct path back to balance. Not many steps, pretty low emotion load. But complex emotions like guilt or awe, whoa, those involve long, winding, branching pathways with tons of intermediate steps. The brain has to do a lot more work, and that results in a much higher, more nuanced emotion load. So this one simple rule seems to explain emotion pretty well. But how far can we take it? I mean, if it's truly a universal rule, it should also apply to things that seem totally different, like memory, dreams, and even logical thought. And you know what? According to the theory, it absolutely does.
All right, first, let's talk about memory. Most of us think of memory like it's a video recording, something we just hit play on. But this theory, and a lot of neuroscience, says that's completely wrong. Recalling a memory is an active process of reconstruction.
Here's how it works. When you experience something, your brain first breaks it down into all those tiny epsilon packages. Then, later on, when you're resting or sleeping, it consolidates them, clustering related packages together into these complex structures called memory fractals. So when you want to remember something, your brain doesn't just pull up a file, it reactivates a bunch of those packages and reconstructs the memory from scratch, right on the fly. It's a dynamic, creative act every single time.
So what about dreaming versus being awake? They feel like completely different worlds, don't they? But the theory just sees them as two modes of the same system. Dreaming is all about low-frequency dynamics. Its main goal is broad, global relaxation. It uses a basic control system to process imbalances. Waking thought, on the other hand, is a high-frequency, super complex control system designed for navigating the world moment by moment. One is for a system-wide reset, the other is for real-time engagement.
This also explains the classic split between emotional and logical thinking. And it's not about two separate brain systems fighting each other, it's all about the shape of the path back to balance. Emotional thought is this turbulent, branching path with tons of emotional side loops. It's complex, it takes a while to resolve. Logical thought, that's a straight, linear path. It's dominated by the theme of the thought, not the emotion, which leads to a quick, direct resolution.
So, if every single mental process is a journey back to balance, does that journey have a predictable shape? A map, maybe? The theory says yes. In fact, it argues that every mental activity, from the tiniest thought to the most epic dream, follows a classic narrative structure.
And just look at this path. It starts with an initiation. That's the disturbance. Then, as the brain moves through its steps, you get conflict as the deviations from balance start to build up. This leads to a climax, the point of maximum imbalance. And finally, the path ends in resolution, where balance is finally restored. A thought, a memory, an emotion, they all have a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like a story.
So let's just pull back for a second and look at the big picture. By starting with one incredibly simple premise, that the brain's main goal is to seek balance, the continuity theory gives us this powerful, unified way of understanding how the mind works.
So here are the crucial points to take away from all this. First, the mind is a balance-seeking machine, through and through. Second, emotion isn't random. It's the toll you pay on the road back to equilibrium. Third, all those seemingly separate things like memory, dreaming, and logic, they're really just different strategies the system uses to do its job. And finally, all of these processes have a narrative shape, a universal arc from disturbance to resolution.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty deep thought to chew on. If our entire inner world, our passions, our logic, our memories, is fundamentally driven by this relentless quest to return to a state of calm, a state of balance, what does that say about what we're all really striving for in our lives?